What's going on? Tevin West, Talks Radio. That's where you're at. Okay, tonight we have the public reading of Scripture. Okay, tonight we're going to be focusing on the Old Testament. I really like the Old Testament. It's like really good spot for great stories. Not saying the New Testament isn't, but I feel like a lot of the church in the USA really be sleeping on the Old Testament. You know, I named my son Melchizedek, which is the priest of the Most High God, and Genesis 14 is the first priest that we encounter, first high priest that we encounter. And he is giving Abraham and his comrades bread and wine after they rescue his nephew Lot from some kings. And I just really, really think that the American church is sleeping on the Old Testament, partly because I think that the American church subconsciously thinks that they replace Israel as God's, the apple of God's eye. But I don't think that's the case. If anything, these last few days and weeks have kind of let me know that we have a place and it ain't where we think it is. Anyway. And so before I start any of these public reading of scriptures, I always like to go into the New Testament. And so before I start off on any of these episodes, I like to read from 1 Timothy chapter 4:13. It says, "Until I come, devote yourselves to the public reading of scripture and exhortation," which is encouragement, "to teaching. Do not neglect the gift you have, which was given you by prophecy when the council of elders laid their hands on you. Practice these things. Immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress. Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by doing so, you will save both yourself and your hearers." And so we flip back to Judges chapter 9. And if you've been with me, we have been, the last public reading of scripture was on the story of Gideon. He was one of the judges that God had raised up, and he was a coward at first, and he wanted God to show him that he was really for him. And God showed him with all patience and mercy. And then Gideon proceeded to go out and lead Israel against the Midianites, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, against the Midianites, and he was successful. And at the end of the battles that he had, the Israelites wanted him to rule over them, but he said, "I will not rule over you. God will rule over you. But I tell you what you can do. You can give me some money, you can give me some jewelry, and I'll make a little something for you." So they gave him about $250,000 worth of money and jewelry, and he began to make a idol with that jewelry, and it was a snare to the Israelites. But even more deeper and more depraved, he began to accumulate many wives, and he was fruitful. He had 70 sons. And he had a concubine in Shechem. And in Shechem, he bore a son from that concubine, and his name was Abimelech. We're gonna listen to this story that takes place in Judges 9 about this Abimelech, which is Gideon's illegitimate son, basically. So follow along with me. Judges 9, Abimelech's conspiracy. Now Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's relatives and said to them and to the whole clan of his mother's family, "Say in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh." And his mother's relatives spoke all these words on his behalf in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem. And their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. So just to point out, 70 pieces of silver, if you don't know, 70 pieces of silver is how much Judas sold out Jesus for before he regretted it and then hung himself. There's also 70 days of Daniel, if I'm not mistaken. But never mind, I just wanted to tie those little things in. I like that little stuff about the Bible. Yeah. Abimelech has hired unwise counsel, and they followed him. And so on verse 5 here, in Judges 9, and he went to his father's house at Ophrah. Now his father at this time, from what I understand, he is now dead. Yes. In Judges chapter 8, verse 35, it says, "As soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals who made Baal-berith their god." So now he is returning to his father's house here in chapter 5. And it says he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the son of Jerubbaal. It was Gideon, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the leaders of Shechem came together, and all Beth Milu, and they, let me read that again, sorry. And all the leaders of Shechem came together, and all Beth Milu, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem. When it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on the top of Mount Gezerim. And he cried aloud and said to them, "Listen to me, you leaders of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over them." Because remember, Israel had been looking to have a king, like, man, we like Gideon, would you be our king, after he got done fighting off the Midianites? And he said, "I won't be your king, God will be your king." It ended up that his illegitimate son, right? I tell him, listen, my grandfather, my father's father, was a child born out of a illegitimate proposition. That's right, my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather was married to another woman when he impregnated my great-grandmother. And so I wouldn't be here if it wasn't because of, I remember that verse in the Bible in Genesis 50. And when Joseph had been, after he had been crowned second in command of Egypt, and his brothers, he had saved his brothers from starvation, and they figured out, oh, okay, well, as he's all grown up, we sold him into slavery, and they thought that he was going to seek retribution and vengeance after their father died, after Jacob died. And he said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." So these things that happened before I was born with my relatives and my ancestors, what was meant for, the enemy tried to make, bad, God made it for good, because I'm here talking to you about it. A lot of people really are like, man, how could God love African Americans if he put them in slavery? Well, he allowed his own people to be in slavery, which are the Israelites, for 400 years, just so he could raise up a man named Moses to lead them out, and so he could get the glory. And I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that in this life, in this imperfect life, there is no progress without struggle. And so I say, to God be the glory, that even though those bad situations happen where somebody from my lineage was brought here in America to on a slave ship, to God be the glory. Because let me tell you something. I might not be alive. I'm of a Nigerian heritage. I know that. I might not be alive today because at a certain point in time, there was a war in Nigeria. If I'm not mistaken, the northern side was Muslim and the southern side was Christian. And there was a war that went on. And there were Nigerians that lost their lives in that civil war. I might have very well lost my life. Maybe God saved my life. Maybe God saved the life of my ancestors to preserve me to this point here. God be the glory. But we don't know. We don't know the whole story. So I'm just very grateful. I know that things aren't perfect. And it would be easy for me to say, yeah, slavery. Like, are you kidding me? Why would you believe in God who put your people in slavery? Well, it's because I'm alive now and I'm able to tell you this story, and I'm living and I'm thriving, and I'm fortunate for that. So anyway, listen to me, you leaders of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us. This is Jotham talking to the Israelites. Trees once went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, shall I leave my abundance, by which gods and men are honored, and go hold sway over the trees? And the trees said to the fig tree, you come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit, and hold sway over the trees? And the trees said to the vine, you come reign over us. But the vine said to them, shall I leave my wine that cheers God and men, and go hold sway over the trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, you come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge and shade in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you acted in good faith and integrity when you made Abimelech king, if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, that is Gideon, and have done to him as his deeds deserved, for my father fought for you and risked his life and delivered you from the hand of Midian. You have risen up against my father's house this day, and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the leaders of Shechem, because he is your relative. Remember, this is his mother's relatives, clan, the whole clan, and also the worthless council that he had appointed to give him counsel. And you have acted in good faith. If you have acted in good faith and integrity with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, and let fire come out from the leaders of Shechem and from Beth Milo, and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and lived there because of Abimelech his brother. So he said his piece, and then he peaced out. Next is the downfall of Abimelech. Abimelech ruled over Israel 3 years, and God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem, and the leaders of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. The violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid on Abimelech their brother, who killed him, and on the men of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. And the leaders of Shechem put men in ambush against the mountaintops, and they all robbed who passed by them along that way. And robbing everything that moved. Oh man. Yeah, that's what they say, like that's what they say, like if you're in the streets, it's like somebody who be robbing, that will be robbing everything that moved. Goodness. So it's just a bunch of vagabonds at this point right here. And it was told to Abimelech, and Gal, the son of Ebed, moved into Shechem with his relatives, and the leaders of Shechem put confidence in him. So they got confidence. And they went out into the field, and gathered the grapes from their vineyards and trod them and held a festival. And they went into the house of their God and ate and drank and reviled Abimelech. So they went and reviled Abimelech. And Gal, the son of Ebed, said, Who is Abimelech, and who are we of Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal? And is not Zubal his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? Would that his people be under my hand? Then I would remove Abimelech. I would say to Abimelech, Increase your army and come out. When Zubal, ruler of the city, heard these words of Gal and son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. He sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, Behold, Gal, the son of Ebed, and his relatives have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you. Now therefore go by night, you and the people who are with you, and set an ambush in the field. Then in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may do to them as your hand finds to do so. So Abimelech and all the men who were with him rose up by night and set an ambush against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city. And Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from the ambush. And when Gal saw the people, he said to Zubal, Look, people are coming down from the mountaintops. And Zubal said to him, You mistake the shadow of the mountaintops for men. Gal spoke again and said, Look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and one company is coming from the direction of Diviner's Oak. Then Zubal said to him, Where is your mouth now? You who said, Who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Are not these the people whom you despised? Go out now and fight with them. And Gal went out at the head of the leaders of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him. And many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate. And Abimelech lived at Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gal and his relatives, so that they could not dwell at Shechem. So they pretty much started something. This dude is not, Abimelech is apparently a very skilled warrior in general, taking charge. So he took his people and divided them into 3 companies and set an ambush in the fields, and he looked and saw the people coming out of the city. So he rose against them and killed them. And Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city, while 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the field and killed them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He captured the city and killed the people who were in it. And he razed the city and sowed it with salt. That doesn't sound good at all. Doesn't sound good. Throwing salt on. Sheesh. I know when you throw salt on a player, that's not good. So imagine throwing salt on the whole city. Sowing it with salt. When all the leaders of the tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered the stronghold of the house of El-Berith. Abimelech was told that all leaders of the towers of Shechem were gathered together, and Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, and he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bundle of brushwood, and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. And he said to the men who were with him, What you've seen me do, hurry and do as I have done. So every one of the people cut down his bundle, and following Abimelech put it against the stronghold, and set the stronghold on fire over them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. And then Abimelech went to Thebez and encamped against Thebez and captured it. There was a strong tower within the city, and all the men and women and all the leaders of the city fled to it and shut themselves up in it. And they went up to the roof of the tower, and Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, Draw your sword and kill me, lest they say of me, a woman killed him. And his young man thrust him through, and he died. When the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, everyone departed to his home. Thus God returned the evil of Abimelech, which he committed against his father, in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the evil men of Shechem return on their heads, and upon them the curse of Jotham. So I just finished that story, but I wanted to tie in something that's going on in real life. And what I wanted to tie in with it was Elon Musk and his 13 children. What it has to do with judges not. So Elon Musk and his 13 children by different women and the potential dangers of growing influence. But I don't think we're stopping there. I think we're going to tie the story in, as I just told, and I want to talk about it as a cautionary tale about power, ambition, and the consequences of unchecked authority. Let's start with Elon Musk. Let's continue this with Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, there's no denying he's one of the most influential figures of all time. From Tesla to SpaceX and Twitter, which is now X, and Neuralink, Elon Musk's reach extends across industries. And there's another aspect of his life that's making headlines, which is his growing family. And as of now, Elon Musk has 13 children by different women. Some see this as a personal choice, but others view it as something more calculated, a way to extend his influence and legacy. Think about it. 13 children potentially inheriting his wealth, companies, and his visions for the future. But here's the question. Here's the question I pose for you. What happens when one person's influence becomes so vast that it shapes not just industries, but entire generations? What happens when power becomes dynastic? Because let me tell you something. This isn't going anywhere, all right? This guy, if he is trying to put his hands on the country of the USA, what do you think that he is going to impart onto his children? What do you think his children are going to learn from this? You understand what I'm saying? There's a world now that is attempting to put robber baron billionaires at the top as sort of a monarchy, running a feudal system, running a monarchy. You know, they call it technocrats. You know, like, I mean, it's just a dystopia. 1984. I mean, listen, Apple and Microsoft have their own armies. These guys are ready to take over the world. These guys want to live forever, and they want to put chips in people's wrist and forehead. They want to surveillance the entire world. These guys, they got more money than the politicians. They got more money than the kings and the queens around. Probably the only people they don't have more money than on this earth is the oil magnates of Arabia, of Saudi Arabia. And they don't report their wealth, so that's different. But as far as controlling the political world and of the Western Hemisphere, absolutely. I mean, he's going for it, you know? And because he has 13 children, he is going to attempt to spread this out, you know? He's going to attempt, from what I see, you know? Even if it's fantasy, let's just play this here. He's got 13 kids. What are the odds that generational wealth, you know, follows, and then they inherit the wealth? I got this article right here. It says generational wealth. Does the apple fall far from the tree? Okay. This is a article that from Enterprising Investor by Raphael Ballon. Okay. Will the son of billionaire, I call them robber barons now. I'm trying to because billionaire is such a neutral such a neutral connotation. It can be bad, it can be good, it can be, and that doesn't mean that just because you have a bunch of money, it doesn't mean that you're evil. Some of God's greatest men in the Bible are rich, money coming out of their ears and nose. The patriarchs were rich. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were rich. David eventually became rich after he became King Saul, rich. Aquila and Priscilla in the New Testament, rich. I've already done study on this. For the love of money, you can go back and look at it. It's on my first season, I think, or second. But you're not bad if you make money. It's what happens after you are taken over by the love of money and power and wealth, what you're doing with it. And so we can just kind of see you'll know somebody by the fruit of their actions. And so the son of a billionaire perpetuate his inherited wealth? Apparently not. If history has any guide, let's see if there's any strong evidence that most rich families will be poor after several generations. Some of the reasons are systemic. Taxes, for example, chip away at a family's wealth by most factors that diminish a family's wealth over generations. The choices that heirs make, these include how they invest in inheritance, how many children will have whether they get divorced, or the lifestyles. Okay, 6 of the 10 richest people in the world were created in 10 years. All of these were all men, which is why I use the term patriarch. Me too, I use that word too. Of course, this is a small sample to be statistically significant. He has like a chart up here of all the rich guys. But at first glance, Forbes' top 10 list shows that capitalism has the capacity to create new billionaires and generate wealth. Another way to look at it is that capitalism replaces billionaires who either fail to increase their fortunes as quickly as others are lost it somehow. So they're saying that when we go to numbers of heirs split, how many children does a billionaire have? It is significantly different from an ordinary middle class. Elon Musk, for example, has, this time of this article, it said he had 9 children and three different women, according to Forbes. Elon Musk is an outlier. The 700 richest people in America have, on average, 2.3 kids. I didn't know that you could have kids in any way, but okay, whatever. And only 22 of those 700 billionaires have 7 or more children. Interpolating this and assuming normal distribution, we reach at a 2.39 standard deviation. Affluent annual net return. This is probably the hardest variable to model. What is the average annual return of a billionaire? High returns are the variable that made Elon Musk go from anonymity. I don't even know how to say that. It's ANONYMITY to the top billionaire list in less than 10 years. And Carlos Slim to fall on the top list to below the number 20. So in this practice, we see the billionaire's return is volatile. First, many have leveraged their returns. They own businesses that take on debt, and some leverage their own estates. Second, many of them allocate their wealth, private equities, and venture capital as assets that may produce high returns or perform dismally. Using the Dempson-Marsh stats and database, returns from 1900 to 2017 for the wealthiest segment of the population average 4.8 per annum with 15.1 standard deviation. So what they're saying is if you have a billionaire that has children, the odds of a billionaire kids wielding that and going with the money the odds are low. But here I typed in what are the chances of billionaire children having influence on the world statistically if he has more than one. So I'm not talking about money. They were talking about money. I'm talking about influence. A lot of people think that that's the same thing, or there is no difference. There is a difference. The Kennedys, for example, they might not have the wealth that they had from their father bootlegging and being in politics. And then obviously his sons, JFK and Robert Kennedy, taking that forward. but it wasn't about the money, it was about the influence. So I typed in, what are the chances of a billionaire children having influence on the world statistically if he has more than one? This is statistically a billionaire with multiple children has a significant higher chance of at least one of them having substantial influence on the world due to access to extensive resources, networks, and opportunities that come with their family wealth, which can propel them into positions of power in various fields like business, politics, philanthropy, and the arts. Okay? It even says here, it says networking opportunities, right? So if we go to, so that article I was reading, it was like, if the chances of billionaires' kids having money in it and making it extend, they're low. But we're talking about more than that. We're talking about the ability to influence the world, right? So we're talking about networking opportunities, education, schooling, family legacy and expectations, right? We're talking about, and also the individual ambition and drive of each person to the social ladder, whether people like to admit it or not, in the world. And some people, some places act like it doesn't actually, you know what? The more and more, I feel like America likes to act like it doesn't exist, and, you know, people can mingle anywhere they want to, but there's levels to it. There's classism all over. And so all I'm saying is this isn't going anywhere. You know, I'm, God willing, I'll be around for a little longer. And this situation, it can get much worse if his kids end up getting influence on the modern world going forward. It just, and here's the deal. The only reason I bring this up is because it is important. It is important. There are things that Elon Musk is doing that people don't necessarily like. They don't like how he's having, you know, shades of taking over and holding the reins in a country that he wasn't even born in. They don't like that, okay? I myself don't really, I'm looking at things right now. The things have to develop for me to make like a super informed decision. I know that he's like in a super deep K-hole right now, which is ketamine. He's deep into ketamine right now. And so his decision making could be a little erratic. So I need to see more, but right now he looks like he's trying, but at the same time, like, he's fueled by so many drugs in his system that, like, the decisions that he make could be swayed and erratic. But nonetheless, if you're looking at the story of, and I wanted to tie this in too, it's like, if you're having, some people say that the Bible is okay with men and people having multiple wives. Okay? Getting multiple pregnant, polygamy. And this is really my point, right? It shows polygamy. It shows men doing those things. But I just showed you, because he did that, because Gideon did that, this is the fallout of creating broken homes and illegitimate children. And you get people who are children who are super hurt, right? I don't say butthurt. It seems like that's like very crass to say. But there was this kid who didn't necessarily feel too loved. I was saying, like, my grandfather came from a situation where he was basically the product of an extramarital affair, and his actual father did not raise him. It was my great grandfather's best friend that actually ended up raising him. And my grandfather didn't really speak to his dad until he was on his deathbed. And they told him he was on his deathbed, and I think that had a profound effect on my grandfather. I sat down one day and asked my grandfather about his life. And he went on to tell me, that was it. That was what it was. He didn't tell me that particular part. My father ended up telling me that part. But he has a lot of situations where he's very closed off. He doesn't like to say too much. He'll keep to himself. I think that is a deep hurt. I think it's a deep hurt. I think subconsciously it's like type of stuff sits with you. But in this situation, in the Abimelech situation, where he had a father that was like pretty prominent, basically second in command only to God. People can't see God, so when they look at the person that God empowers, they're like, they must be God. I mean, because a lot of people we were made to worship. So if you don't worship God, you're going to worship something else. And it said that the Israelites whored after other things. And so they were steady trying to make somebody king. And so it's like the influence, right? Like the kids, after he had died and the kids got older, they turned into men and things that nature. They're like, hey, Abimelech, you fit for king, man. You got it in your blood. It's in your blood, and people pumping him up, and he's like, yeah, all right, let me get my clique, let me get my fam, let me get my actual family, and let's go murder all of my dad's kids and get to hang out with them anyway, and let me be king. What if there's a situation like that in the future? What if it's Elon Musk? I don't know how many different women he's gotten pregnant, but let's just say for the sake of time, he got 4 women pregnant. And out of those 4 women, it's 13 kids. But only 1 kid was born from, I don't know who it is particular, but only 1 kid was born from, because at the time of reading that article, he had 9 kids by 3 different women. So let's just say 4 women, 13 kids. But one of the mothers had 1 son only. How do you think it's gonna feel? For example, he has 1 particular kid right now that he is, from what I understand, he's completely ignoring. The one that he named a weird, like AXEN or something like that, by a pop singer named Grimes. So what if that kid, and Grimes was trying to get him to tend to his child, he's in the hospital or something like that, and he's too busy in a K-hole giving orders to the American government and giving federal workers ultimatums with no law attached to it. What if that kid grows up and it's like, yeah, my dad was a great man, and he's, people have him. I think that I'm gonna take over the world, and in doing so, I'm gonna eliminate my siblings so that they don't get a chance to usurp me. This type of stuff happens all the time. People in royal families and stuff like that, they, you read history, one of the siblings takes the throne, and they either have to, kill the younger kids so they don't take over or whatever, or vice versa. The kid is appointed king, queen, and they're super young, and the older brother or sister doesn't have any claim to the throne. That specific kid did, that specific sibling, so they'll try to kill the young kid while he's not able to, lead or whatever. So it's very, very volatile. You would think that in the modern world, like, it's all cool, it's all good, but now these situations get very volatile as sibling rivalry. Remember, in the Bible, the first instance of murder we see is Cain slaying his brother Abel. You see, this is not too far-fetched. And maybe it is a little outlandish, but this is the public reading of scripture, and I wanted to, let you guys see the parallel. And this is what happens when this is a product of broken homes. It's important that men don't go around creating broken homes. That's important. Women don't do it too, but I'd say men, because we usually are the ones with the trigger to pull, if you know what I'm saying. So if you have the ability to self-discipline yourself, don't go around dipping your wick in everything. I think a lot of men who are put in a situation where they have the means and the resources are just like, whatever, screw it. I have the money. Because a lot of, men are pretty much taught what makes a man is the amount of money he makes and how he's able to provide. If I can provide a lifestyle for the mother of the child and provide sustenance and, clothes and money for it, money for the mother, and sustenance and, goods for the kid, and if you're worth your own salt, trust fund or whatever, inheritance. If I just have a few of those things lined up for my kids, but the big thing is providing. If I can provide for my kid, it takes the place, and the money for the world, it takes the place of me having to actually father. So at the end of the day, if anybody's like, oh, like, you don't take care of your kids, like, no, like, I pay my child support. I mean, that's the way the world makes it anyway nowadays, at least on this side. They send you to jail if you don't pay child support. Yeah, cool. But what about the father who is taking care of his kid in that situation, but doesn't necessarily have to pay child support? What if he doesn't have the money to pay child support, but he has everything he needs to take care of his son, and he's doing everything else? Oh, I'm saying I'm getting off topic, but a lot of men think that it's the money thing because we've been told, like, you know how they say, like, the man, the money don't make the man make the money. Well, nowadays, from the actions of people and the way the world works, the way it looks is the money makes the man. I mean, I'm telling you, like, a lot of men, if they're living at home with their parents, probably wouldn't consider themselves a man. I don't know, I wouldn't. Anytime I've been living at home with my parents, I didn't consider myself a man, which is crazy, right? There's plenty of dudes that live home with their parents, and definitely I would consider them. That's not how I felt. That's how I was raised. But anyway, the only thing I'm saying is you gotta look out for that type of stuff. You gotta be on the lookout for that, because that is and just for clarity, about this story, just in case you didn't understand it, it was an Old Testament story in Judges 9. It's the story of Abimelech. It's a man who craved power and was willing to do anything to get it. And Abimelech was the son of Gideon, a judge of Israel. After Gideon's death, Abimelech decided he wanted to rule, but instead of earning leadership through merit, he turned to manipulation and violence. He convinced the people of Shechem to support him. Then he killed his 70 brothers, all but one, to eliminate any competition. For a time he ruled, but his reign was marked by tyranny and bloodshed. Eventually his ambition led to his downfall. In a poetic twist, Abimelech was killed by a woman who dropped a millstone on his head. The story ends with a sobering question. Unchecked ambition and the pursuit of power often can lead to destruction. So, Elon Musk and Abimelech, both driven by ambition, and, there's a key difference. Abimelech's story is a warning that shows us what happens when power is pursued for its own sake, without regard for ethics or consequences. Elon Musk, on the other hand, still has the opportunity to shape his legacy in a way that benefits humanity rather than dominating. Will he do that? Only time will tell. So, what do we learn from all this? I think we can learn, first, power, whether it's in the hands of one person or a dynasty, must be wielded responsibly. Second, ambition, when unchecked, can lead to destruction. And finally, history, whether biblical or modern, has a way of repeating itself. If we don't pay attention, we have to pay attention to this stuff, guys. Elon Musk's 13 children may seem like a personal matter, but in the context of his influence, it's a topic worth discussing, guys. It's a topic worth discussing. I usually don't discuss stuff like this in particular, like how somebody's personal life so hard, but this is worth noting. This guy has 13 kids. He's a robber baron billionaire. He's trying to wield power. He's Nazi saluted twice in live events. He's going to functions dicked out on ketamine. It's worth noting. He's trying to fire and streamline the federal government, which, like I said before on an episode, I don't have a problem sending him the 5 bullets. That's not my call. I got word from my superiors not to do it. And it's a national security issue because you're sending it to a freaking HR email that may or may not be encrypted. And it's a bulk email. Everybody, it's just not doesn't seem very smart. There's a better way to go about it. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, will his legacy, I asked this question, will his legacy be the one of an innovation and progress, or will it become a cautionary tale like Abimelech's? Well, his kids, really, because it's really his kids. Like, because his kids end up becoming something much sinister, because the apple don't fall far from the tree. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Elon Musk, Judges 9, and the dangers of power. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. Do you think Elon Musk's family growing could be a cause of concern, or am I just overthinking it? Until next time, this is Talks Radio, Tevin West. Power is a tool, but how we use it defines us. Good night.